All right, so yesterday we did something similar to Monday, and today we'll be just doing something similar to Monday and Tuesday as well. So like yesterday, we're going to go over the practice questions that you worked on, questions 1 through 18, 1 through 16, or whatever it was. So we're going to do that first. All right, and then we'll get our new words and new terms to review, and then we'll do a couple other things. All right, so clicking on this, please follow along with me here. If you didn't notice, the answer key was posted to the bottom, but we are going to go over these just to make sure we're on the same page. There's only a few of you here. I think this is a great opportunity. If you have questions, don't hesitate to stop me and ask me, especially if one didn't make sense. Unmute yourself or write in the chat so we can go over this. All right, so number one, a major reason the American colonists of the 1600s chose to settle along the sea coast and rivers was so that they could, the correct answer is 2. Anytime you are living near the rivers was for either transportation or trade. It's a very typical thing. All right, so the reason why so many people lived near water systems and river systems back in history was so they could transport and trade. So 2 is the right answer. Number 2, another mercantilism question that we had one yesterday. Under the British system of mercantilism, the American colonies served primarily as a market for British manufactured goods and a source of raw materials. We had materials that Britain did not have. Therefore, they liked the United States for having those materials, and they took them and then manufactured them. Which heading best completes the partial outline below? The House of Burgesses, which we talked about Monday, Mayflower Compact, New England Town Meetings, and the Albany Plan of Union. These are the correct answer will be 4. These are our foundations of American democracy. Okay, we go back and look at these as the big first moments in American history. House of Burgesses was the first House of Representatives we had. Mayflower Compact was like our first constitution. All right, so on and so forth. The phrase consent of the governed refers to it's going to be the correct answer is 1, the source of the government's power. Remember, the people run the country. When I ask you who runs the country, you should not say the president. It is the people. And the term that gives people the power is consent of the governed. The people are the governed. The people give their consent to do things. All right. Number 5. One weakness of the Articles of Confederation was the inability of the central government to do what? So what was the central government or the federal government not able to do? And that correct answer was 2, collect adequate taxes from the states. They had to ask the states for money, and many states often said no. All right, and this led to our federal government having very little power. Number 6, what was a result of the Great Compromise during the Constitutional Convention of 1787? Okay, good review question. This was the combination of the New Jersey Plan and the Virginia Plan, which set up the Senate and the House of Representatives, and that correct answer would be 1. This created a bicameral or a 2-house legislature. All right. Number 7, based on the United States Constitution, the census helps to determine the number of what? Well, it's 2 things. It's electoral college votes, and it's also going to be members from the House of Representatives. So in this particular case, number 7 is going to be 3 because it's going to talk about the electoral votes assigned to each state. All right. Number 8, a primary reason the anti-federalists opposed ratification of the Constitution in 1787 was because the Constitution, we talked about this at length yesterday, that is going to be 1, include a Bill of Rights. All right, the Anti-Federalists were not accepted until a Bill of Rights was added to the back. Number 9, the power of judicial review was established in the Supreme Court case of Marbury versus Madison. Okay, whenever you think judicial review, you should think Marbury versus Madison. Judicial review gives the Supreme Court the power to review actions from the branches of government, along with ruling if laws were constitutional or unconstitutional. Number 10, which quotation is correctly paired with the document which it's found? This is a pretty tricky question, I think. All right, because you kind of have to hear it out, and then you have to see, does this relate to the topic we're talking about? So let's start with number 1. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That would be Washington's farewell address. That is not correct. Okay, that is the Second Amendment. That would be from the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. So you can eliminate 1. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. That is saying it's from the Monroe Doctrine. That is not correct. All right, that is from the Declaration of Independence. All right, 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this new continent, a new nation. That is correct. That is how the Lincoln's Gettysburg Address starts. All right, so 3 is the correct answer. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, they say it's from the Declaration of Independence. It is not. That is from the preamble of the Constitution. That was probably the only tricky one. All right, I could see you choosing 4. It's not a horrible answer, but 3 is the best answer. 3 is correct. Number 11, during the 1790s, the primary goal of the United States foreign policy was to what? Well, we only learned about 2 foreign policies. One was Washington's, one was Monroe, and both have to do with neutrality. So we're going to go with 1. All right, 1 is the correct answer for that. Washington's proclamation of neutrality. Even if you forgot the year when Washington was president, this does relate. In Gibbons versus Ogden, the Supreme Court strengthened the federal government's role in the national economy by, okay, the correct answer for that one is 3, upholding the power of Congress to regulate interstate commerce. Anytime you see Gibbons versus Ogden, you think interstate commerce or trade between the states, and you will probably get the answer. One way in which Frederick Douglass, William Lloyd Garrison, and Sojourner Truth are similar is, well, they are all people from the abolitionist movement, so we are going to choose number 1, the abolitionist movement. Okay, that's just a review of remembering who these people were. If you remember who they were, it's a very easy question. Number 14, Abraham Lincoln's 1858 warning that a house divided against itself cannot stand referred to sectional differences over, well, Lincoln, obviously, then you should just know it has to do with probably slavery. And that is correct. And he talked about how the country can't be half slave, half free. We will not be able to survive. And this all centered around the issue of slavery. Number 15, what was the common goal of the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution? They are basically going to be giving free rights to African Americans, so the best answer is going to be 2. Okay? In the latter half of the 1800s, a large labor supply and abundance of national resources and the construction of new railroads contributed directly to mostly to, I would say 1 is the best answer. Okay, this isn't a question that we do too often. All right, so 1 is the best answer. All right, number 17, you did not have to do. You're going to learn about that later in Unit 4. We're going to now go to 18 very quickly. This has to do with something from Unit 3. We have a picture here of the Great American Cow. As you can tell, the cow is very large. It's going over places like New York, New England, the Atlantic Ocean, also getting to the Mississippi River, St. Louis. So what does this mean? Well, which statement most accurately describes the meaning of this 1896 cartoon? Basically, if you just look at the cartoon, it's Eastern businesses, right? States in the East also profit from Western farming. Okay, so the cow and the farmers are very helpful to all the groups. Okay, no matter where you are in the country. All right, please write in the chat if you have any questions. You need me to go over any others. If you're good, just write good in the chat so I know I'm okay to move on. Any questions you want me to go over? Mia says we're good. Good. Okay, let's move on. Thank you, guys. So, very similar setup to yesterday. So yesterday you got this midterm review. I think by this point you should know how to do this. You are getting 5 terms. You're telling me the definition or importance. You're filling this out. Then you get historical circumstances term. Okay, tell me what was going on leading up to a particular time period. Okay, and we'll take a look at the questions now. So here are your day 3 words. Today we'll give you about 10 minutes to work on it. All right, as per usual. So describe or define the importance of these 5 terms. Okay, I'm going to start with John Locke. All right. 2 days ago, we did reserve powers. Today, I want to do delegated powers. Okay, so what is the difference and what are delegated powers? Let's spend a little time talking about tariffs. Then we'll go to Reconstruction. We'll look at the radical Republicans. And then probably your hardest word of the 3 days so far is going to be the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. You may struggle with that one. That is okay. All right, but you could obviously work on that. And your historical circumstances, we're going to center it around a Supreme Court case. So Plessy versus Ferguson. What happens to get us into Plessy versus Ferguson? Okay, so that was Supreme Court case. Um, what gets us to that Supreme Court case? What are some things that happen in American history that make the Supreme Court rule? Okay, obviously the Supreme Court needs things to happen for them to get a case and for it to rule. So what were those historical circumstances? All right, we'll get to 8:54. You got 10 minutes. I'll be here if you have any questions while I take attendance. Okay, guys, take a couple more minutes. Okay, guys, we're going to go over the definitions. Um, Please follow along. Make sure you guys are comfortable with these terms, and obviously ask me any questions if you need to. All right, so let's first start with John Locke. He was a individual we spent a little bit of time on in October of this year. He was the famous Enlightenment thinker. He came up with two major ideas that we kind of took and used in our foundations of American democracy. He came up with the social contract theory, which was basically that the people had to keep a close eye on their government, and if their government wasn't doing a good job, they needed to overthrow it and start a new government. Basically, that's the social contract theory. And he also came up with the idea of natural rights, that no matter who you were, where you're born, if you're poor, if you're rich, if you're white or you're black, everyone should have rights that the government can't take away. Um, Thomas Jefferson was a huge fan of John Locke and followed his guidelines and his guidance when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. So a lot of Locke's thinking comes out in the Declaration of Independence. We've seen the comparison back in early October. So this is a good example of that. All right. So delegated powers. So these are one of the constitutional powers. It kind of outlines and makes it clear that this powers that are written in our Constitution are given to our federal government. It's very clear. It's written there. It says what our federal government's legislative, executive, and judicial branch can do. It will say things like Congress has the power to declare war and coin money. It will say the executive branch has the power to conduct foreign relations. The judicial branch could judge lower case and appeals. All right, it says exactly what each branch of government could do, and that is known as a delegated power. If I was the boss of a company and I started delegating responsibility to people, okay, that's where we get the word. So a delegated power are powers that are written in the Constitution and given to our federal government. So a delegated powers for our federal government. A reserve power, which we remembered on Monday, is for our state government. Okay, and we have shared powers, concurrent powers, which are for both. All right, like both, you have both state taxes and federal taxes. Okay. Tariffs, we need a little bit more than just a definition, but hopefully you remember a tariff is a tax on imported goods or a tax on trade. All right. Tariffs, but the reason you really need to know for this class is tariffs encourage people to manufacture and buy products from the United States. Okay, if you can get something that costs $20 from another country and costs $25 here, you're probably going to buy it from another country. But if there's a tariff and that brings the price of the good up to $40, well, then maybe you'd be more willing to buy the $25 product at home. All right. This is often meant to help stimulate and grow our economy, and basically it helped out people that were against buying products from other countries. So that is a good situation. All right. I'll give you guys a minute to make sure that's all copied down. All right. Let's go over the radical Republicans. So if you go to Reconstruction, these were, even though radical is a bad kind of word when it's usually put in front of something, the radical Republicans weren't necessarily bad congressmen. They weren't bad people, but basically they were people in Congress who were opposed to the Confederates coming back into the country. They really didn't like, even though they were in the same political party as Abraham Lincoln, they didn't like Lincoln's, welcoming back the South after the Civil War. They were very big in helping out African-American equality. They were very big in pushing the 13th, the 14th, the 15th Amendments. They were very good about doing that. And they wanted to punish the South if they disobeyed new laws. Okay. So they were a very big group in the beginning of Reconstruction for helping out African Americans, yet they also punished the South a little bit. So that's where they get the term radical. They were like extreme Abraham Lincolns. All right. Our hardest word for the day were the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. All right, because this goes all the way back to beginning part of October. We looked at John Adams' presidency, and John Adams passed two laws that weren't specifically very popular in the country. Okay, well, his administration. They were called the Alien and Sedition Acts, which basically limited freedoms, okay, of some groups of people in the United States. Virginia and Kentucky did not like those laws, so this is where it all comes together. All right, it dealt with states' rights and the federal supremacy clause. So let's go back what the supremacy clause was. In our Constitution, the supremacy clause says that if there is a federal law, all states need to follow it, right? The Constitution and federal laws are more supreme than the states. However, Virginia and Kentucky thought that these laws were unconstitutional, the Alien and Sedition Acts, that is, so they came up with their own resolutions to nullify or cancel the Alien and Sedition Acts because they thought they were unconstitutional. And at the time, they were allowed to. All right, it took until McCulloch versus Maryland to basically say, like, no, you can't have states cancel laws. But at the time, they were able to kind of get away with this because our Constitution and our country was very new at this point. All right, so this is a classic states' rights versus federal government supremacy clause problem. All right, I'll give you another 30 seconds to finish copying. All right. So I'm going to need you guys to open up, I know there's only 4 of you here, but the chat box, okay, to look at the historical circumstances for Plessy versus Ferguson. So let's do that. So we're going to go to our day 3 words. All right, I'm going to type in Plessy versus Ferguson. What were some topics that led to the Supreme Court case Plessy versus Ferguson? So what are some things that the Supreme Court case ruled on? What are some things that happened in American history that led to the Supreme Court case? So open to you guys. Perfect. Yeah, you have to start with the Jim Crow laws. That is numero uno in the historical circumstances. So if you're writing an essay about the historical circumstances of Plessy versus Ferguson, you explain the Jim Crow laws. Were excellent. What other things should we talk about besides the Jim Crow laws? That is a good start, though. Separate for equal for black and white, Muhammad, that is not a historical circumstance. That is if you were putting the term Plessy versus Ferguson, that's the definition of the term, but I don't want the definition of the term. I don't want the outcome of the case. I want the historical circumstances. All right? And if you meant the Jim Crow laws, then yes, you're correct. That is kind of the same thing. All right? They said separate but equal things for black and white is okay. That's kind of similar to the Jim Crow laws. What else do you got? Excellent, Jessica. Reconstruction. Okay, this whole era. Okay, you mentioned that, okay, we're going through a period of Reconstruction. We're coming back together as a country. There was a lot of problems, okay, we talked about. You can maybe mention some problems, okay, that, you know, you have the sharecropping, right? You have the, you know, the literacy tests. Okay, good. Let's try and get one more. Try and give me one more if you can. You guys are missing two pretty big ones, but one very big one. Without a certain thing happening, we don't even get Reconstruction. We don't even get, you know, the Jim Crow laws. Something severely changed the plight for African Americans. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Civil War ending, which ended slavery. Remember, the Civil War doesn't end. You don't get the Jim Crow laws. You don't get Plessy versus Ferguson. So the fact that the Civil War ended and the North won, that ended slavery. Okay? I think a couple of things you could also mention. You can mention the 14th Amendment, okay, which was a huge problem. And then if you remember about facts of the case, you know, maybe talk about, this is a little advanced, but Homer Plessy rode on a train car that was segregated. And those were the historical circumstances of the case. All right, we're going to look at another thematic essay. We'll do something similar to what we did last time, is we're going to look at the thematic essay. All right, I'll give you another 30 seconds to finish copying this. We're going to look at the thematic essay. I'm just going to ask you questions about it, just so you get another sense of what it looked like. All right. Okay. So let's take a look here for this thematic essay question. Not that one, sorry. Let's look here. All right, so one of the big topics we talked about was you needed to know, laws and compromises. And this is a good example of laws and compromises. All right, so I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you yesterday. Use the chat to please answer. Okay, you get a thematic essay. You look at it, you see there's 2 bullet points. Okay, what is the introduction? Okay, what are you doing for the introduction? Right when you get it, the first thing you do, please tell me in the chat or unmute yourself. Thesis statement, good. What else? What else do you put besides the thesis statement? even before the thesis statement, the first thing you do, how do you write the introduction? No, not the hook, Sydney. This is an ELA class. We don't need to hook anyone. Okay, these people are forced to grade this. We're not looking to hook anyone. Has to do with this box here in the middle. See the highlight? Has to do with that. What is highlighted is the historical context. So the first thing is you have to rewrite the historical context in your own words. Then you put thesis statement. Every introduction, whether it's a thesis whether it's a thematic essay or it's a DBQ, it's the same thing. Rewrite the historical context, then you put your thesis statement. That is your hook, essentially. Okay, that is what the essay is going to be about. You can treat it like a hook, but it's really not. It's just telling what the essay is going to be about. 2 sentences. All right, now you get to the first body paragraph or the second paragraph. Okay, what will the second paragraph or the first body paragraph be about? According to the task. Look at the task. What will the first bullet point be about? What will the first body paragraph be about? Notice how it says, everything is outside info, Muhammad. Yes, you're going to have outside info in both the body paragraphs, but what will you be specifically talking about in the first body paragraph? It says to select 2 laws passed by the United States Congress, which they give you about 8 choices. Now, I know you don't know probably half of them here, and that's fine. I'm just giving you an example, right? Went over the Embargo Act, the Indian Removal Act, the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So you're going to choose 2 of these 8, all right? How or why laws were created. Yeah, essentially, right? Essentially, you're going to tell me the historical circumstances for the 2 laws. This is why we're doing everyday historical circumstance practice, because they guarantee when you get your thematic essay, you have to do the first body paragraph, you have to do historical circumstances. You've got to be prepared to do it. Every essay seems to have a bullet point on that. All right? After body paragraph 2, we're just running out of time, so I want to finish up here. It says, discuss the impacts of the law on American society. So you have to discuss, what was the law and how it affected American society. And I'll put for both of them, because you have to pick 2. So you have to tell me what the Embargo Act was. Okay, if you choose that one. You have to tell me what the Indian Removal Act was and how they both affected American society in their own way. All right, after that, you have to do the conclusion. All right, I would suggest for you guys, especially if you have a little trouble with the structure, go back to the lessons where we go over how to do a thematic essay, how to do a DBQ essay in terms of the structure. Okay, they all should be very similar. It's an introduction, then you first body paragraph's the first bullet point, the second body paragraph's the second bullet point, and then you are going to do the conclusion. All right, you guys have to go. You guys are going to your next class. I will see you guys tomorrow, okay?